Our next session is going to be jointly taken by two speakers. We have Mr. Tuhin Chakraborty from Thoughtworks. He is design strategist, customer experience, product and design service line with Thoughtworks. And we have Mr. Sachin Sapre. He's the product strategist, customer experience, product and design service line, again with Thoughtworks. To tell you a little bit about them, about Tuhin, he is an experienced design leader for innovation, strategy, and product, business designer, digital transformation practitioner, creative consultant, and storyteller with 20 years of eclectic experience launching the next generation of products and solutions across diverse industries, spanning consumer electronics, health tech, education, communication, and media. Then we have Mr. Sachin Sapre. He advises clients looking to generate new streams of digital revenue by envisioning and launching innovative new digital products, enabling differentiated experiences. He has spent over 20 years in product and solution management, leading globally distributed teams at some of the world's leading software product companies, engaged in building B2B software products, solving mission-critical business problems in domains such as supply chain management, product lifecycle management, business intelligence, and customer experience management across a range of industry verticals. Please put your hands together for Mr. Tuhin Chakraborty and Mr. Sachin Sapre.
Good morning. Thank you for having us here. The topic that we are going to talk about today is Empathetic CX, developing meaningful connections. And I'll delve in some of these very fundamental aspects of empathy and CX that are often overlooked. So at the outset, I would like to start with a question. Every day we take hundreds of decisions, right? And as perfectly rational people, we would like to believe that most of these decisions are well thought through. But then I would like to ask you, can you think of an instance where the decisions you've taken or the choices you've made might appear to be illogical to others? Anybody in the audience? Maybe Sachin, you?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I can think of is, I happen to be a runner, so I do a lot of running. And one of the products that I have really taken a passion for is actually my Nike running app. It looks right like this. Any runners in the room? Not really? Good to see that. And so the reason I am really particularly fond of this app is because it appeals to me at a different level. On the one hand, of course, it lets me track my runs, helps me reach my goals in terms of the distances I want to cover and stuff like that. But on another level, it offers me hope that I too can run a half marathon one day, and I too can join a community of runners who are like-minded. And of course, they are the shoes themselves, which are there very much in the background. But those are not really the main thing. And of course, as you might imagine, I have been using their footwear as well. But this is a product that has, or rather, it's not even the main product. It's like an accessory to the product. But that's the one that has, kept me hooked onto Nike's products. And so there you go. I mean, that's the emotional angle to the customer experience that has helped drive demand for the main product itself.
Thanks, Sachin, for that input. So it appears that indeed there are situations where our choices appear to be illogical. And I would also like to stance a personal example. So on the left of the screen here, you see my grandma's old closet. As you can see, the glass is kind of fuzzy. The compartments inside don't work very well anymore. But I have made an intentional decision to keep it in my new home because it's a memory of someone who's no more. But thinking from a purely functional perspective doesn't make much sense, right? Now on the right, you see another object. This is called the Juicy Salif. It's a juicer, but it's inspired by the form of, anybody in the audience who has an idea? Yeah, it's a squid. So obviously in terms of functionality, it's not very useful. But then if we think about why this was created in the first place, the designer was Philip Stark, a very influential industrial designer and architect. He created this object as a sort of anti-pattern to the reigning design philosophy of that time, which was form follows function. An idea coined by Louis Sullivan, who's also known as the skyscrapers man. He was building skyscrapers all over America with kind of glass and steel, and he sort of popularized the idea of functional aesthetics, which then became mainstream all over the design world. And Stark's object here is kind of an intentional contradiction to that concept. Now, at this point, let me talk about this book, Emotional Design. It was written by Donald Norman, a researcher and a very well-known writer in the area of psychology, design, and usability. He was also looking for an object that could symbolize the content of his book, the message that he was trying to convey, and that's how the juicer made it to the cover of the book. But what was this message that Don was trying to convey? So when we talk about empathy in CX, what we're actually trying to do is gauge the preferences and behaviors of our customers. And to that effect, sometimes we find those to be kind of erratic or out of place if we think only from a functional perspective. So the way Don puts it, he says that we must remember users are people after all, and they make decisions steered both by logic and emotions. So I've kind of tried to plot his model as this scale with emotional at the top and logical at the bottom and the three levels of emotional design in between. And that resonates very well with this another framework. This is called the UX hierarchy of needs. It has a focus on experiences at the top. At the bottom of the pyramid, you have a focus on tasks. And now if we map it back to the emotional design levels, the lowest level is that of the visceral, which talks about largely sensory responses. Things like effectiveness, functionality, and reliability. And then you have behavioral. This is more about usage. So you have things like ease of use, ease of learning, convenience, and efficiency. But then the highest level that we can aspire for in terms of emotional design is reflective. That is where the product or the service carries a high personal significance. Or it can be representative of one's identity, where it gets intertwined with yourself. And in this context, I would like to stance the example of the Mumbai Dabbawala food delivery service. It's a part of everyday's life in Mumbai. And then it could also be so pleasurable as an experience that you would like to share it with others. You can think of brands like Apple and so on. But oftentimes, products or services are not even designed to achieve the highest level. They stop somewhere here, as you can see with the dotted line. And this is because the success criteria or the measures of success are often defined from a business and technology perspective alone. And by that, you lose out on the opportunity to go beyond transactions and be able to create a lasting relationship with your customers. And this is also reflected in our HBR survey report. This was jointly done with Thoughtworks, and it shows that executives recognize the importance of CX, but in practice, very few actually excel at CX delivery. In fact, 94% of the respondents said that they understand that it's extremely important for their organizations to deliver industry-leading customer experience to be successful. But when asked whether they're able to deliver that kind of experience as of today, only a meager 10% could sort of strongly agree. So this demonstrates what we call the belief-behavior gap between what is being preached and what is being practiced, and it can happen because of several reasons, like organizational silos or top-down investment decisions, and so on. But this brings us to a point where we must acknowledge that applying customer centricity requires an organizational level mindset shift or a cultural change. And this is where we say that organizations should not just talk about CX, but also practice it. For example, to start with, a robust, holistic customer journey needs to be created for the right set of personas. That should be able to explore the problem space sufficiently and then derive kind of opportunities or solution directions that can then inform the let's say, the product strategy or decisions on channels and touchpoint optimization, or how business and experience services work together seamlessly to be able to deliver on the desired value. And all of this needs to be underpinned by a strong technology and data strategy as well, so that the end value proposition, both in customer and business senses, are achieved. And I'll try and illustrate this with a couple of use cases. The first one being from my own personal work portfolio. This is at a time when I was working for this international health tech company. I was leading their next generation radiology imaging suite of solutions. It was a program of programs and involved several imaging modalities like CT, MRI, and X-ray. And the first product that was released to the market was the MR workspace. Now, in terms of technology excellence, there were a lot of accolades and positive feedback, be it about productivity or the quality of image acquisition, the use of AI and ML to automate mundane tasks or even complex tasks like protocol selection and so on. But when you think about the CX part of it, there were significant patient complaints on the waiting period prior to the examinations. So while all this technology was going towards improving the experience in the exam space and the workflow there, the real problem in terms of CX was actually in the pre-exam area, which was kind of an outlier. So to solve this, we created this feature called Day Manager. It was around patient scheduling for the scan for the day. When we did a root cause analysis, what we realized is that in the legacy system, the schedule was largely a static list that did not incorporate in a dynamic way all the changing factors that are there in a workday during the scanning that happens from morning till evening. So the solution we designed was this dashboard, which you can see at the top of the UI. This was a sequence of tiles, each tile representing a patient exam, and they're ordered much like a Kanban board, where already done scans show, and the currently ongoing scan, and then the ones that are to be done. And then they're annotated with visual cues that provides information to the radiographer who's sort of running the system in a real-time way through integrations in the back end. And by that, he's able to take almost instant decisions on who the right next patient should be. The biggest benefit here was operational efficiency for the employees or the staff of the hospital, but it also had a huge emotional benefit as well, meaning it was able to alleviate the emotional stress and anxiety that patients often face waiting to be examined for a potential critical illness or sometimes even a life-threatening one. Just drawing back your attention to the picture on the right, many of you may be familiar with the anxiety on people's faces while they wait outside a radiology department. So overall, this had multifold benefits, and the fact that the throughput time was quicker, the staff of the hospital were now able to attend to their patients as genuine, dependable caregivers. Moving on from health tech to agri-tech, this was a Thoughtworks client, a manufacturer of nitrogen-based chemicals and fertilizers, who wanted to change the perception in the market from that of being a seller to being a loyal friend to farmers. So while we were trying to look at how to improve adoption and engagement for the client, we realized that the area to be focused on was the farmer-retailer relationship, which was sort of downstream in the value chain. And the idea was to take it onto a digital platform such that the farmer is able to procure all the information on demand from this digital system, and by that eventually build trust with the farmers. But this was still a business idea, and it needed to be validated with evidence. So what we took up was what we call a lean experimentation or lean startup approach, where you sort of start small, think big, and learn fast. So the big picture here was to be able to eventually scale this platform to a hyperlocal e-commerce ecosystem. But the small start meant that we needed to find that optimal communication channel where the farmers could be, communicated with. And WhatsApp was already quite popular as a social platform in rural India. So we agreed to use a WhatsApp-based chatbot conversational UI interface for our MVP. The MVP itself was quite a success. So you can see the adoption figures in the first month, some 4K farmers, some 5K orders, and 100 retailers onboarded in the first month itself. So in that sense, successful. But again, from an experience perspective, here we are trying to build trust between humans using a bot, right? And the principles of HMI or HCI become very important. So what we did was we laid down some principles and tried to sort of use them as guardrails to retain the quality of the conversation and the experience. I'll illustrate some of them with examples. The first one here says, don't pretend to be a human. So the bot introduces itself saying, I'm Bbot and I'm here to support you with all your farming needs. This is important because it sets the expectation low when it comes to the users, because they're not expecting the kind of complexities that a human-to-human interaction entails when they know that they're talking to a bot. Then another principle is about offering an escape hatch. This is kind of generic as well in terms of interaction design. But the point here is that let's say a conversation comes to a dead end. There should be always a way to either go back to the main trunk and follow it up with a different branch, or be able to access a different channel for communication. Then the third one, this is interesting. This is about making the conversation fluid. So let's say the farmer had shared his location earlier. At a later stage in the conversation, the farmer wants to know the availability of a certain product in his neighborhood. What the bot does is, he procures the information from the previous interaction, draws it up, and is able to provide a list of shops in the farmer's neighborhood without further questioning or repeating the question. The last one here, this is about using a structured input method as and when required. So an example could be a decision node. Typically, the user would have to respond by invoking the keyboard and typing a yes or no. But considering the community we have at hand, where the literacy rate could be low, or comfort with technology could be less, or even the devices and the features that are available on those devices could be limited, right? Connectivity problems. Given all of this, the best approach is to provide very clear CTAs by which all the user has to do is pick the right option, right? So these were a few examples. I would like to conclude by saying that there are a lot of disruptive technologies like Gen AI today, which can take this kind of an experience to the next level. But it is advisable to use discretion while deploying technology, staying sensitive to the customer segment and to the context of use. With that, I'll hand it over to Sachin, who will take you through another case study and conclude on this talk. Over to you, Sachin.
Thanks, Tuhin. So Tuhin spoke about two case studies in very different settings. The first one was a medical kind of health tech scenario where the entire product design and the implementation was very much rooted in some core needs that customers have. These are latent needs that are not very obvious at a functional level. The second case study that he spoke about was about in a very different setting again, that of farming, where the kind of audience for which you're trying to design the product needs to take into account their specific situation, their familiarity with the technology, and the design choices kind of follow from there. What I'm going to do next is talk about yet another setting, and Thoughtworks has worked in a range of verticals where we've solved some of these problems. This particular situation happens to be in in a D2C kind of a setting. And it's about engaging and rewarding customers in loyalty programs. We just heard in the previous session how Myntra is running their own loyalty program as well. But before we go into the details, let us do a quick show of hands. How many of us here are members of loyalty programs? Some loyalty program or other. Okay, so quite a few of us, right? And so why do we essentially join such loyalty programs? It's not just about getting the best prices or the best deals, but also about helping ourselves feel good about ourselves. So we not only want to buy the products and services we are interested in, but we also want to feel good about ourselves, that we got the best deal possible. And of course, companies want to retain your loyalty as well. So they will throw in a lot of offers that will prompt you to come back. And we also heard the previous speaker talk about how it can be a double-edged sword, where on the one hand, you're trying to reward your loyal customers, but then you might also end up in a situation where they tend to misuse that, that facility. So one of our clients came to us with a problem statement that was all about implementing this loyalty, implementing a solution that will drive engagement with their loyalty program. But this loyalty program was in a different setting from your usual consumer setting. It was in the context of fuel retail. Right? So if you just go to the next one. And to do that, they wanted to adopt a very human-centered approach using design thinking that would somehow engage their customers and make them really engage with what was on offer. And so what you see here is a mobile app. And this mobile app was part of this rewards program that they had put in place. But they wanted to tap into this inherent latent human need to feel good about oneself. Right? And that was one of the starting points for coming up with this customer experience and with the product design and business model that followed from there. And the way it took shape was to offer what was called a price assurance feature. So there was, of course, a loyalty app with its own reward points and so on and so forth. But what it offered was a subscription model around price assurance. And what you see on the right is the way it worked in practice. So if I am, for example, a vehicle owner, a car owner, for example, and I want to go and tank up my car, then what it really offered was the ability for you to go to one of the company's fuel pumps. And while you're there, declare yourself as a member of the rewards program. The moment you do that, the app would do a survey of all fuel pumps in your vicinity, and particularly fuel pumps that are competitors to your own fuel pump, and compare the prices that they offered with the price that's being offered here. Now, of course, in India, the situation is somewhat different because obviously all of them are nationalized, so this may not resonate well with Indian customers. And this, by the way, happened to be in the US. But there, where it's a perfectly competitive market, chances are that prices would differ. And so you might end up in a situation where you feel like you are being overcharged for fuel that's available at a cheaper rate just a few miles away. And so how do you make the customer, so as a company, I cannot control prices that competitors can charge. But what I can do is make up for that loss and make it good. And so the way they implemented it, or we helped them implement it, was to do this price check at all competing fuel pumps and then offer the savings that they would have made by going to one of the other fuel pumps in the form of reward points. And so they got an instant credit in the form of reward points right there in their app, which could then be redeemed for successive purchases at that company's pumps elsewhere. So it achieved two purposes. On the one hand, it tapped into this need for customers to make sure that they feel good, that despite being part of the rewards program, they are being treated fairly, the company has been transparent with them, and from the company's perspective, by giving them reward points, they ensured that the repeat purchases happened. Customers continue to engage, and they drove the right sort of behaviors that they wanted from consumers as part of the reward program. So this was an interesting example where the entire choices that were made to design the product as well as the business model were rooted very firmly in the customer experience strategy that they came up with to initiate this program. So to sum up, we wanted to say that the strategic intent that you have behind an ideal, so-called ideal customer experience should be the one that should be driving any kind of technology choices or initiatives that you might want to implement for improving customer experience. And I am saying this despite us being a technology company. We very firmly believe that it is actually a three-step process that one needs to adopt for delivering a very differentiated experience. To begin with, you need to identify the right mix of functional, emotional, and higher level needs that customers have. And this is not easy. I mean, it's easy to offer price discounts and so on. It's not so easy to identify what are the drivers that are really valued by customers. So not only are they functional, like Tuhin pointed out earlier, but they could potentially be at a higher level. Like I showed you in my Nike app, it might have to do about motivation that I'm getting from my product or service. It could have to do with a sense of affiliation or a sense of belonging that I have by being part of a larger community of people trying to achieve similar goals. And so those kind of higher level needs need to be taken into account to design an ideal customer experience. And then, technology is kind of a third step where you look at what are the options that technology provides or what are the capabilities that technology offers to let you implement that ideal experience. And with that, we will like to close. Tuhin, back to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Sachin. Just like to say that Thoughtworks is a company with technology at core, but we always practice this discretion in our consulting where we make sure that the deployment of technology is well thought through and apt in the context of the customer or the user. So with that, I would like to thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Tuhin, and thank you, Sachin. If we have any questions for them, I think you all can take it on the booth outside. Is that okay?
That's
Thank
okay.
you. I would like to request Mr. Ankit Mathur to present the memento to Tuhin and Sachin. Can we have a round of applause for both of them?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.